Now, before I started writing, so I've done everything up until this point. I'm ready to start writing the novel. But before I do that, I wanted to test a theory that I think would be effective. And I picked this up from my friend Craig Martell. And Craig has this theory, and it's called the minimum viable product theory. Now, a minimum viable product exists outside of the realm of writing. It's a common business practice that businesses use. But if you apply it to writers, it's the idea that you can send or you can write a part of your novel, send that to readers, and if the readers like it and they buy into it, you continue writing it. If they don't, you figure out why they don't like it, fix what it is that they don't like, and then get it to a point where they like it and they buy into it so that you can continue writing. It's like making sure that you're building a foundation before you start writing. And so he talks about this in his book, Become a Best-Selling Writer. And I really, really resonate. This idea just really resonated with me because, I've been doing this for 42, 43 books. And, some of my books have been successful. Some of them haven't been successful. But I never got real feedback from readers this early on in the process. My process has always been to just create and then send it out into the world. And so one of the things that I'm always good about, I'm notorious about this, is I always challenge my assumptions. I'm always trying things differently, always trying new things just to see if they work. And if they don't, then they don't. But if they do, what can I learn from it? And so I decided to try this and put my own spin on it. So what is the goal here? The goal is to find alpha readers to provide feedback on the first 10% of my manuscript. If they sign off on that first 10% and they tell me that they're intrigued, then I'll continue writing the book. If they don't, I'll figure out what it is that doesn't resonate with them, correct that to the best of my ability, get them to buy in on it, and then move on. So I want a team of people to help me with this. And so I looked for 3 avid urban fantasy readers, people who were well versed in the genre. I needed people who could meet my timeline 1 week in December, which is a terrible week to do this, by the way, but I did it early enough in December that it didn't intersect with the holidays. And one of the things that I always practice on, or that I always preach on my YouTube channel, is that paid beta readers are good beta readers. And so I followed my advice and I offered to pay the beta readers. I paid each, or the alpha readers in this case, $40 a pop for their time and their help with this project. So step 1 of this was to read the first 10% of the book, which ended up being about 20, 30 pages. Step 2 was for them to provide feedback and take a survey that I developed to get some more targeted feedback. And then step 3, after I incorporated their feedback into the first 10%, was to send it back to them and have them read my revisions and provide feedback just to make sure I could end up on the right track. So remember, I hadn't started writing my book at this point. I was just organizing all of this before I started writing. But here's the thing. I didn't have an audience. So some of you are probably thinking, well, no, you do have an audience. You have a YouTube channel of 7,000 subscribers. You have a mailing list with your existing pen names. But actually, no, I don't have any dedicated urban fantasy readers. And so for this project, what I decided to do instead was, I think to myself, when I was looking for beta readers in the past, when I had my first novel, man, I really struggled to find beta readers. And I think a lot of people are in this spot, right? So beta readers, they're volunteers with their time. They don't always have the ability to turn things around quickly for you. Sometimes they drop off and you send your book to them and you never hear from them. Corralling beta readers sometimes can be like corralling cats, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but it just, if you've done it, you know what I'm talking about. And so here I am again, starting a new pen name with no clout. I'm not a best-selling author. I don't have anyone that knows who I am. So how would I do this again and do this as a debut author? So one of the things I talk about is paying for beta readers. I decided to pay for beta readers. So what I did was I did a job post on Upwork. Upwork is a site where you typically go to get freelancers like editors or cover designers. But I decided, well, what if I did a job post and look for a beta reader? What would happen? So I offered $40 to read 5,000 words and take a 15-minute survey. And you know what I got? I got 60 applicants. Now, when you did your last book and you posted for beta readers, did you get 60 applicants? That's an incredible number. I did not think I would get anywhere near that amount. I was floored. That was really cool. And so then in addition to that, I did a Goodreads beta reader forum. And there's a forum out there for beta readers. And I posted the job there and I got, I think, 4 offers. And those beta readers were legit. So I also did a call to action in my social media network for Michael Aran on Twitter and Facebook, and I got 0 applicants from my existing audience. So it truly was as if I was starting over. So the big takeaway for me was that you can use Upwork to find beta readers. There are professional beta readers, believe it or not, who have profiles on Upwork, and if you're willing to pay them, and almost all of them were asking for reasonable prices. So if you're willing to pay them, you can find a guaranteed beta reader. But the key is the next step. The next step is, what is my criteria? Because I don't want just any beta reader. I have very high standards. And so I'm going to ask a lot of this group. I'm going to ask them for their candid feedback. I don't want people that are just going to tell me, oh, it's fantastic. I want people that are going to be thoughtful about their feedback and who are going to give me feedback that I can actually use. So again, I have high standards. So what I was looking for were 3 criteria for the people that applied for this role. And that was, they had to be well read in urban fantasy. No exceptions. I needed people that had a deep understanding of the urban fantasy genre. Not somebody that just read Dresden once and loved it. Not, somebody that has beta read romance and, I would love to read this and give you my feedback, and I've never read urban fantasy, but why not? No, I wanted true urban fantasy fans, people that read and buy urban fantasy every day. That was the most important part of this. And then I needed people that were passionate, because I found that passionate readers give better feedback and they're more invested in the project. So I wanted someone that was passionate and who could show me that passion. And then I wanted somebody that was going to be accountable, right? Because I needed feedback fast and I needed it on time. And so I will tell you, a paid beta reader is a beta reader that meets their deadlines on time. So ultimately, I wanted a team that reflected the market that I served. So if I think about that, the urban fantasy market, most of the readers are female. And so the majority of my alpha readers were female. I did 3, so 2 out of 3 were female, and I had 1 male. And I wanted people that read traditional and indie. So I had 1 person that read almost exclusively indie. I had 1 person that read both. And then I had 1 person that really only read traditional urban fantasy. So I had some really good perspectives. And then I wanted people that, like I said before, would provide thoughtful feedback. Now, with my applicant pool of 60 people, how do you filter those people down? Because inevitably, there are going to be people that aren't good fits for the project and so on. And so my experience as a manager and actually having to hire people on my job, I think really helped me here, because it really helped me kind of come up with some ways to screen and weed out people. And so I actually had people answer 2 interview questions just in writing when they applied for the project on Upwork. And I asked them 2 questions. The first question was, why do you think you're a good fit for this particular project? And the reasoning behind that was simply to determine if they have the skills to do the project versus someone just looking for money. Because there are a lot of people on Upwork who they're just trying to make a living, and they'll do any kind of project to make money. And that's not a fault against them, but that's not what I'm looking for this project. And then the second question that I asked is, what are 3 to 5 urban fantasy books you've read, and why do you like them? And the reason behind this was to determine if they have the will to do this project and test their level of passion. So I was looking for skills and will. Do they have the skills to do this job, and do they have the will to do this job? And have they actually read urban fantasy, or are they just bullshitting me? So I had a lot of applicants, and so I think I left this open for a week. And And so here was an example of a bad fit. And I share this with you just so that you can kind of see what my process was of selecting good alpha readers for this project. And you can use this when you're looking for beta readers as well. So this was an example of a bad fit. Question number one to this project of why you think you're a good fit. This person said, there were two responses that were kind of funny. One of them said, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think I've ever read a single urban fantasy novel. Well, thank you, but no. And then I had a second person that said, I've read some of the Dresden Files, though admittedly it's been a long time. I'm an avid reader of all different genres and reading levels who loves a good story with memorable characters. So this is one that, this sounds like a great person, right? They're a beta reader. They've read for a lot of genres, and that is great. And I think that's where a lot of authors would just say, okay, yeah, sign me up. But that's not quite what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody that is truly dialed into urban fantasy. So then a second example of a bad fit to the second question, what are 3 to 5 urban fantasy books you've read and why do you like them? So I'm not going to give you examples here, but I will talk about how I easily disqualified people. So if they didn't list 3 to 5 books, they were disqualified. If the only thing they could mention was Dresden, disqualified. If they were editors, disqualified. I'm not looking for editors. I don't want editors' insights. I want readers' insights. If they were writers, they were disqualified. I don't want writers reading my books. I want readers reading my books. If they couldn't articulate why they liked urban fantasy, disqualified. Again, I'm wanting someone who can be thoughtful in this project. So let's talk about some examples of the good fits. So I actually had a short list of about 7 people that were just phenomenal, and I wish I could have picked them all, but I really only had a budget for 3. And so to the question of why do you think you're a good fit for this particular project, here's an excerpt from one of the persons that I chose, what they wrote. I've been a beta reader for other authors and have assisted in finding plot gaps and fixing consistency issues. I understand what an author is looking for and I can deliver. I also appreciate the balance of urban fantasy, mixing the familiar with the esoteric or supernatural. That is its sheer appeal. So it's a good answer, right? So I can tell that they put some thought into what they were writing. So the answer to the second question is, what are 3 to 5 urban fantasy books that you've read and why do you like them? So this was a great excerpt from another one of the readers that I picked. She said, I've read almost all of the Charlene Harris's Sookie Stackhouse series. They're almost like comfort food now, which is why I like them. I really enjoyed London Falling by Paul Cornell. Their narcotics connection was well written and accurate. I found the atrocity archives to be very interesting and more than a little weird because I appreciated the hints of Lovecraft that came through. So on and so forth. So she was listing books in the genre that I hadn't even read yet. So I Googled them and just made sure that, that they were legit, and she took a thoughtful approach into how these books shaped her in her view of the genre, and I just thought this was such a great example. And so I was thinking, okay, so there was a narcotics angle to the to this book. That's kind of interesting. Like, what would she think about the necromancy in my book? And so that was a great example of someone who was a perfect fit for this project. I'll talk about the process of writing the book, because I still hadn't written the book yet at this point. I'll talk about that here soon. But I had all of the alpha readers lined up and committed and ready to go before I started writing. So that way I gave myself like a week to write, this first 5,000 words, and then it was off to the races. And so after I wrote this, so this is when I started writing the book, after I had everyone bought in and committed and selected, and I had some initial thoughts before the feedback. And so I had written this sample of 5,000 words. And so I kind of wrote down in my journal, just so I could preserve it, that I was feeling really good about the story and the hero, that my hope was that the story balances the familiar and something new. I think pacing was an issue, that I knew that was going to be something that they were going to call out. And, I'm okay with the fact that readers could hate it. Totally fine with it. If they hate it, then they hate it. We'll see what we can do. But I had to be okay with any feedback that comes in. So if they say, Michael, this story is a dog, well, I have to be okay with that. If they say, Michael, this story is incredible, well, then I have to be okay with that too. So no ego on my part. I'm just willing to see where this goes, what I can learn, and just how I can be a better writer with this process.